Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist. Today I'm bringing you a book review from the Spinetinglers series, and it's book number 24, Your Turn to Scream. Honestly, I am going to be blunt about this. This is one of the worst kids' horror books I think I've ever read, ever. And I know, I've praised Spinetinglers. I have praised a couple of books. I say how much I love this series. This is one I never read as a kid, and I did grow up reading these at my library and stuff. But this one, I'm kind of disappointed I picked up. It's one of those stories that it tries to be edgy, but lacks any of the edge. It's one of those stories that just rambles on and on and on throughout the story and just repeats itself nauseatingly and then gives a cliche ending at the end just to put the cherry on top. I am not impressed with this book. Honestly, I think this is, like I said, one of the worst children's horror books I have ever read. Period. So let's get into the plot overview that give me too much away. So the story centers around this kid named Michael. He is a swimmer, and he likes to swim a lot, and he doesn't have much friends because he's always focused on his sports and stuff. He's always swimming for, the team, trying to get, where his older brother is at, because his older brother is an accomplished swimmer. People know him. People give him recognition. He basically lives in his brother's shadow. And basically, the first couple of chapters explains how Michael feels about living in his brother's shadow and how much he loves swimming and how much it's changed his life for the better. And then it gets into this random, it feels like it seemingly happens out of nowhere, where he's just riding home from swim practice on his bike, and he looks over at this yard of this old woman who he used to terrorize when he was younger. And they call it the creepy house because the old lady is kind of like a reclusive hermit, and supposedly, according to Michael, kids that live in the neighborhood will torment her throughout the years, and people aren't really that friendly to her. But today, for some reason, she's deciding to have a yard sale, which is something out of the ordinary, and it catches his eye to the point where he wants to go over and explore. Also because he doesn't want to meet his brother at home, and his brother will probably pester him about swim practice and stuff, so he wants to kill some time to make sure that his brother gets home before him, and he can, kind of avoid him because his brother already will be in his room. So Michael goes to the old woman, and he's looking around items, and the old woman's very creepy, the way she's described, and he doesn't really see much, and she says, well, there's something for you. I want you to go look over in those boxes. There's something for you in there. And he goes, initially looks, and there's nothing in the boxes. And she goes, no, look now. It's in that box. And he pulls out this weird, ornate-looking board game. And it's closed, and he goes, what is this? And she goes, it's something I think you would like. You like playing games. And she's kind of hinting passively at him because her brother used to ding-dong ditch her house, and he used to play games. Like when he would ride by her house, he would scream, she's chasing me, and just try to paint her like this evil woman. Come to find out, I really don't know if she's evil or not, but we'll get into that in just a second. So he pulls out this board game and opens it and notices that the art on the board is hand-painted, it looks like, and everything seems to really pop and kind of mesmerize him at the same time. And he's like, okay, well, how much is this? And she goes, well, name your price. And he goes, oh, I can't buy this from you. This is really nice, I can't do that to you. And she goes, well, how much money you got? And he goes, $2. And she goes, okay, sold. Just promise me that you play this game with your brother. And that was the first red flag to me that this story was going to kind of go there with the brother and stuff, but it didn't. So this is the last time we see the old lady throughout the story. He basically takes the board game and rides off on his bike. Like, okay, this just happened. I just bought a board game from this lady. And he gets home. Now, for the next remainder of like the next 5 or 6 chapters, basically the rest of the first half of this book, is centered around Michael being paranoid about his brother touching the board game and how it keeps disappearing and how he thinks his brother's going in his room and taking it. And basically Michael meets a friend who needs a pool to use to help practice so they can help each other make the swim team they're trying out for, because they got put on the provisionary list. So Michael agrees to help this friend out. And that's literally all the rest of the first half of this book. I mean, there's nothing interesting to bring up or talk about, really. Until one day where Michael and his friend are in his room and this board game magically reappears after it's been missing for a while. And Michael's brother comes in and they decide, hey, let's try to play this game. And Michael's like, I don't think so. Maybe we should go swim in the backyard and practice. And the brother, being the brother, he's kind of like the mean older brother archetype, as cliche as possible in a lot of the points in this book, picks up the dice and accidentally rolls the dice. Now, this takes him to this world within the board game, kind of reminiscent to Jumanji. And how this is set up, mind you, is that there's like 4 tokens on the board, right? Each representing a different insect. I think there's a centipede, there's a tarantula, there's a beetle, like a horned beetle or something, and then there's a scorpion, I believe. And each kind of have like their own biome. Like the centipedes have like a rocky biome. The tarantula kind of has like a deeper woods biome. The beetle has a more open field biome, and then the scorpion has like a desert biome. However, when they go into this board game world, they're stuck in this same biome that started with the tarantula, and they never leave the same biome, which kind of confused me, because I'm like, why would you say like the climates change on the board when you move different pieces around or study different pieces, when when you're playing the game, you don't actually change biomes. And let me explain this even further now. This book has the audacity to kind of wish-wash even the token concept here, because these tokens come to life. They turn into giant like kaiju insect monsters, and these kids have to basically run from the giant insect monsters because the board disappears. They have to run through the woods, cross a creek by swimming through it, and then going on the other side to find the board game and wait for the insect to come meet them at the board game, and then they have to roll the dice again and then fight another insect. Rinse, repeat. That is literally the second, majority of the second half is just doing the same thing basically, except with different creatures. And the amount of chase scenes is ridiculous here. Not to mention, literally, I wish I can talk more about this book, but there's really nothing to talk about until we get to the scorpion here. And I'm like, okay, finally, scorpion. You know, the other 3 are kind of similar. Maybe the description just wasn't there on the author. On the author's doing. Maybe, just maybe, the scorpion would kind of, you know, liven things up and do something different here. Nope. The scorpion is still in the woods biome, except in this time it kind of shakes things up when they activate the scorpion to kind of defeat the final boss. They also accidentally activate the tarantula, and they have to go through this whole waiting in the water thing and just waiting for the time to pass until they can figure out a way to get rid of them. And then they realize that there's these rules to the board game that were there that were never really expanded upon except told like one time. And Michael remembered that throwing water on it might do something to it, so they threw some water and they started to melt. Now, mind you, these monsters are little metal figurines, and then when they activate in the game, they become life-size, actual, like, in-flesh monsters. When they throw the water, they melt like liquid metal. I don't get that. I don't get that at all. But nonetheless, it works. They find a way to defeat them, and they get out of the board game. However, when they get out of the board game, they realize that the pieces are still moving and the pieces are coming after them. And then there's this very cliche end with Michael running to his pool and jumping into the pool with all these pieces and then getting them all wet, and then they all dissolve, and then there's a kumbaya cliche fairy ending. And that's basically your turn to scream. Oh my gosh. Okay, so if I had any positives with this book, I would say that maybe the setup with the creepy house, the thing they called like the creepy house with the old lady, that was probably the most interesting part of this book. However, this old lady never turns up again in the story, and it's supposed to be implied that she gave Michael this board game for cheap, or made it for him, presumably, to mess with him and his older brother for all the torment they gave her over the years. But they never revisited that in this story. And this story is written by, I think her name is Kathleen Dewey. I think that's who wrote this. I think she wrote the most books considerably, or one of the two authors that wrote majority of the books in this series. This one, no offense to Kathleen Dewey here, but this story sucks. It sucks. This is bad. This isn't even like it's cringy or anything. It's just nothing is there to care about this story. Now I guess we're getting into the negatives. Like, okay, the whole swimming concept and the whole sibling rivalry Michael has with his older brother, that's okay to start with. But then when you jump into the whole board game mechanism to kind of help bridge the later of the first half into the second half, just to have a repetitive 5 or 6 chapters based around hiding board games and missing board games and pitting the finger on your brother, it's just so boring. This is probably the most middling book I can possibly muster for kids horror. Like, this is bad. Like, people say there's some middling books in Goosebumps. No, this is more middling than that. I have to be honest. And let's get started on the second half now. This board game concept has to be one of the lamest, non-scariest things I think I've ever read. Not to mention, it's repetitive. It is nauseatingly repetitive at that. And on top of that, the ending is so cliche that it just... Anything original, like maybe with a twist or something to kind of like liven it up, it's just completely brain dead at that point, because the whole story just doesn't know what it wants to tell. It's just a poorly thought out book, if I had to put my finger on it. This is just one of those books that fail to do anything scary. And from what I've read in Spinetinglers, the Monster Channel is a genuinely scary book. The Dead Kid Did It. That was a really good book. Even Camp Crocodile had its moments of scares. This, no. This is just a hot mess. This is a hot mess of a book. I'm sorry. Yeah, I really have nothing else to say about this, unfortunately. But when it comes to a 0 to 5 star rating, I'm going to be honest, I deducted 3 points off the bat just for the plot on this book. I mean, nothing to be saved here. Maybe minus Michael's struggle with his older brother. But that gets ruined at the end by the cliche factor that this book just throws at you at the end. It's so frustrating. And then I deducted basically another 0.5 off for how lackluster this book actually is, okay? Not only is this book boring and has one of the dumbest horror plots in kids' horror I've ever read, this book is just mind-numbingly boring, repetitive, and it's just not scary. There's nothing here to really hang your hat on for this series. I think this is quite arguably is one of the worst in the series, and I would be shocked if there's anything worse than this, to be honest. So when it comes to 0 to 5 stars, I gave this thing a 1.5 out of 5. This is a flat F of a book. Do not recommend this. So yeah, that's my book review on Your Turn to Scream. Let me know in the comment section if you have read this. Did you love it or did you hate it? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.